Thanks for joining us here at Step Into Story for our final book chat of the year. I'm Barb Tanner Wallace. I'm here with my bestie, Donna Jones Allward, who wants a nap, and is also the author of the upcoming historical fiction, When the World Fell Silent, out August 1st. So what's new, Dee?
Well, clearly I need a nap because I played the wrong intro. And it's alive today, so we couldn't just start over. So this is not the writer's room. This is our book chat for December. What a way to go for our last book chat of the year. But yes, I would like to have a nap. I've been pretty busy lead up to Christmas and some other life stuff that's been just a little bit wild. But the good news is I signed a new contract. So yeah, I know. So with my same publisher for a Titanic story that should be out in 2025. So I'm particularly excited about that.
Very cool.
Yeah. So what about you?
Let's see. Well, my novella is doing really well. I am still waiting to hear from the publisher. That's with dates and a deal memo and stuff like that. But in the meantime, I started writing. So I'm working on a book about Syndrome K in occupied Italy.
I love that.
I think it's going to be really fun. It's a very heavy topic, but it's really cool the way people stepped up to protect other people during World War II.
And how much are you nerding out on the research?
How much what? I'm sorry?
Are you nerding out on the research?
Oh, totally. The biggest thing I had to do is there was the doctor who's in charge of it. The doctor who ran it gave one interview, just one. And Steven Spielberg owns it. And it gave it to this foundation. So I had to write to the foundation and ask permission. And I still haven't heard back yet. I mean, usually you have to have a reason why you're doing it. And background information, I swear to God, this is just background. I'm never going to use it, was my answer. May not let me have the interview. But other than that, I am totally nerding out. I'm this close to trying to convince my husband to go to Rome. Probably not happening. So.
Oh, I think you should, though.
I'd love to go to Rome. But I have some friends who live in Rome, and they're giving me a lot of information. Yeah. A couple of historical fiction authors who are based there, so it'll be fun.
Cool.
So, by the way, we should say we had originally advertised that Janice Robinson Daly was going to come join us. She unfortunately can't make it. We had some technical difficulties, so she's going to be scheduled for after the holidays, probably in June. She's going to come visit.
Yeah, because she has a book coming out, so we're going to have her on then.
Yeah, which will be a lot more fun. And so we're sorry she couldn't make it, but technology happens.
The show must go on.
That's right. So speaking of World War II, though, this month we're doing Pam Jenoff's book, The Winter Guest. It's a story set in Poland around Christmas time. And this is the cover, which I like. The European cover has her in a red coat.
I like the blue for this one.
I like the blue. I just love the colors on it. And it looks really, really pretty.
Yeah.
So here's the back copy. Life is a constant struggle for the 18-year-old Nowak twins as they raise their three younger siblings in rural Poland under the shadow of Nazi occupation. The constant threat of arrest has made everyone in their village a spy and turned neighbor against neighbor. Though rugged, independent Helena and pretty gentle Ruth couldn't be more different, they are staunch allies in protecting the family from threats of the war that is closer to their doorstep with each passing day. Then Helena discovers an American paratrooper stranded outside their small mountain village, wounded but alive. Risking the safety of herself and her family, she hides Sam, a Jew, but Helena's concern for the American grows into something much deeper. Defying the perils that render a future together all but impossible, Sam and Helena make plans for the family to flee. But Helena is forced to contend with the jealousy that her choices sparked in Ruth, culminating in a single act of betrayal that endangers them all and setting in motion a chain of events that will reverberate across continents and decades. I gotta admit, that is good back copy.
It is very good back copy.
That had me hooked. And plus it was Christmas, and we like to do kind of a wintry, Christmassy theme around this time of year. There was a lot to unpack in this book. Personally, I came away with kind of mixed reviews. I've read other Pam Jenoff books. And this one was not my favorite. How about you? What was your reaction?
I'm a bit mixed as well. I think I was expecting something a little bit warmer. like, okay, so Pam's writing is always really strong. She's a wonderful writer, and so I have no qualms with the quality of the writing at all.
No, we should say that right up front.
I think you and I both found it darker than we expected.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that she made some really brave editorial choices. As a writer, I looked at them and said, these are really brave choices. If her goal was to demonstrate the brutality and bleakness of occupation, and I'm pretty sure that was her goal, she scored. I mean, she hit the nail on the head. The opening chapters, I had a visceral reaction to reading those when they're trudging through the woods and going into the village. And I remember reading it going, God, I don't know if I could ever write something that could hold up to this. I thought that she caught the despair and the poverty and the struggling and the starvation, all of that she captured really, really well in those first few chapters. And I really, like I said, it was a visceral reaction. I really felt for these two women who were obviously living with 3 kids and stuck in the woods with no idea that they were ever going to have any future beyond what they had.
Yeah.
And it made me really want to get to know them.
Yep.
On the other hand, there was so much bleakness that I think it diluted some of her bigger moments. I'm thinking of, like, towards the end of the book, there's a scene where they see what Helena witnesses firsthand, what they were doing to the Jews. And it's a pretty horrific find.
Yeah.
But to me, like, it hit after all this other stuff, and it didn't really have the same impact, like that. And I didn't feel her shock or any of that stuff because so much else had happened.
Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't think of that scene when we were talking about this earlier. I didn't think of that scene in particular, but you're right. Like when she sees it, when Helena sees it, I mean, it's acknowledged, but it doesn't have that like oomph impact because it's just one more thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it should have been a real punch in the gut for her.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh my God, I knew bad things were happening, but I didn't know it was
like a bring you to your knees moment. And I was talking with my eldest about something similar in that we watched It's a Wonderful Life the other night.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about how funny it is, but also how dark it is. And talking about how you need those bits of light and dark and how they set each other off. And you know, the comedy kept the dark bits of the story from being too dark. But then when those moments of deep emotion came, you really felt them, right? Because it's not. So I kind of feel like we just didn't have those shades of light and dark. But to be fair, she does, you know, try to balance that bleakness with the romantic relationship between Helena and Sam, which is quite lovely.
It is.
And it's sweet and it's fairly innocent. But also has the danger of being discovered. I mean, the stakes are high for both of them and the uncertainty of what would happen in the end, because, you know, like love in the time of war. So she did kind of try to balance it out with that, you know?
Yeah. I liked how they sort of created their own little world. You know, I'm not spoiling anything to say she hides them in a chapel. And it's kind of a burnt out, abandoned chapel that some landowner had built years ago. Right. And they had their own little world. And when in that bubble, it is very beautiful. You can see how love can bloom. And it is very innocent. It's very sweet. What I liked the best was Helena, who has been set up to be the tomboy and the hardy one, the strong one, the one that will go out and kill the animals and break the chickens' necks.
Yeah.
And this guy sees her as a pretty girl. And it's the first time in her life that she feels pretty and feminine and she feels seen.
Yeah.
You know, that's a big thing for her, that, you know, she was always seen as one thing. This is the role she had. And now suddenly she sees this person seeing her as much more and listening to her. And you just feel how attractive and seductive and how wonderful that must feel for her. Mm-hmm. Especially because she'd been the less girly one. Ruth is very much set up to be the pretty one, the delicate one, the one that boys are going to like better. So I really warmed to Helena during those scenes because I could feel you can just imagine what it must be like to always be called the plainer one and then finally be the one that got somebody.
Yeah, and always be the one who's taking care of everybody else, and then have
Yeah.
someone else want to take care of you.
So okay, so I said this to you when I written in my notes. As sweet as that was, the fact that she kept his existence a secret, and I get it, she wanted to keep this special moment to herself, but that was the first in line of a whole bunch of secrets and choices, and all of these choices are bad and destroy the family.
Yeah.
So there is some serious dysfunction in this family. Would you agree?
Yes,
Especially between Helena and Ruth.
Yeah, it's pretty messed up.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is there's a real sense of competition there, and especially on the part of Ruth, I think she's especially competitive against Helena. And if we hadn't been explicitly told, I don't think we would have guessed that they were twins, because they're very different.
Yeah.
And, from the moment that they first appear on the page, we realize that they are two basically 18-year-old young women that are now parenting their younger siblings. And their parenting styles are very different. And
they're still immature themselves in many
ways. And that creates a lot of tension and, again, competition between the sisters. And like you said, Ruth has always been the pretty one, the one that everyone expects to marry and have children or whatever. And so when she finds out about Sam, she's already been sort of thrown over by somebody, which she's still smarting from.
So we should point out that, this is World War II. All the eligible Polish men are fighting.
Yeah. And so she had this option, she was seeing somebody, and then he basically ditched her. And I think, honestly, her vanity was hurt more than her feelings, because she says that she liked him, but she wasn't sure she loved him. But she's very upset that he left her and then went and married someone else.
And she sees herself as having no options.
Right. And then
all the men are gone now, so what am I going to do?
Mm-hmm. And then when she finds out that Helena has been, falling for this soldier that she's been hiding, she can't believe it, because she's like, I'm the pretty one. Why? How could this even happen for her? I'm the one. And so, she's really not super likable. And I
thought that too at first, until I started looking at it through her perspective. And in her eyes, Helena got everything. Helena was the one that was the capable one, the smart one, the one that, and she didn't see the things that she got.
Right.
I think that she was jealous because they both wanted what the other had, which was the parent that paid attention to them.
Yeah.
Ruth wanted the father. She wanted the father's attention. What she didn't realize is that the father really wasn't paying attention to Helena either. But it was
or she didn't really know her father in the way that Helena did, and Helena knew the bad parts. And so it's all set up so nobody talks about what's really
they all have their very distinct roles, and it's been set up since childhood that Ruth will be the good one, because that's how you won your mother's favor. Helena would be the one that would go out and go hunting and whatever with her father, because that's how she run his favor. And I think the way that she portrayed the relationship and how complicated it was, I'm going to give Jenoff a lot of points for that. Because one of the things, maybe it's me, but it seems like it's a pet peeve of mine that you have twins in a book. They always have that, the twin ESP, that twin bond that only I can feel, and I feel what she's feeling right now, and I understand, that sort of thing. These girls did not. Okay, they're 18-year-old girls who really would like to not have the other one around. Yet they did want the other one around.
Other than looking similar, they were very different.
Exactly. They could, and but I'll agree, Ruth came off as the worst. I mean, she is selfish. She's childish. I think she's been sheltered her whole life, which is why she was selfish and childish. And, she was raised to be taken care of. And now she's not. She's doing the caretaking, and she thinks that's all unfair. And there's two scenes that stuck out that I think illustrate the way the twins are. One is at the very beginning when Helena's walking to the city, and she, for a moment, thinks about not coming back. And then the other is when Ruth is in the kitchen and she is eating a piece of honey and she doesn't want to share it because it's hers.
And she keeps it hidden at the back of the cupboard.
And that, I think, highlights both. Neither of them are happy, and both of them hate the situation they're in. So, I think she did a great job of pointing out that, Helena's not this, she's doing a lot of stuff and sacrificing for the family, but she's not happy either.
And she's not perfect.
Right. And so extra points for that. But I will go back to my dysfunction comment because no one talks and they rationalize their choices.
And they're so much.
I thought they did some really realistic rationalizing, but it was frustrating as hell. And it's like, if you just told them, and what's worse is Helena's the one that kind of started the ball rolling with the, I'm not going to tell you this thing, and then we're going to keep it a secret from our brother. And, a lot of their secrets led to disaster.
Yeah.
And I got at the end, I'm not sure either of them really accepted the responsibility. I think that they didn't see that they played a role, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Maybe missed it, but I know that Ruth didn't. Okay, Ruth totally didn't.
Yeah. I think you're right.
Helena did either.
I think you're right in the rationalization thing, and there was a lot of, they'd make choices and then they'd find a way to absolve themselves of any guilt that they might feel about it. And Helena's decisions, we can talk. We're going to talk about Ruth here in a minute, but we kind of be like, oh well, but what Helena did wasn't really that bad. But honestly, Helena's decisions, and a lot of it was about not talking and not being honest about things, actually had some horrible consequences for the family in the end. And so we can't talk about that without talking about what we're calling the big betrayal.
The big betrayal.
Right. And I don't want to go into too much detail.
Mentioned in the back copy that there is one, but we can't go into detail.
Right. Because we don't want to spoil the story and tell you what that is. But let's just say that it's a huge moment, or a moment kind of in two parts, where something happens with one sister and then it leads to her making a second big mistake. And I'm not sure.
Real betrayal. It's funny. The first one seems like the dramatic betrayal, but it's really that second half that causes bigger problems.
Yeah. And I'm not sure that, like, when people read the book, they'll know exactly what we're talking about.
Yep.
I'm not sure that other betrayal was even needed.
Yeah.
I think she could have made a different editorial choice, story choice, and still made it work. There was already tons of tension. There was already tons of things at stake. That actual thread it could have been removed without actually changing much about the story at all.
I don't think it would have changed the story. Yeah, I think that part of that thread is for Ruth's arc, but I think there are other things that Ruth had that she could have dug into to make her come to the same conclusions at the end.
Right. So the first thing that she does that she feels bad about, right?
Yep.
And then if we were to skip the second thing, but then get to the result, which is, okay, so which is a consequence for Sam. Okay. Yes. Then, if you'd taken the second part out and that consequence had happened, she still would have felt guilty. She still could have had that same character arc. Helena still would have been incredibly worried. That whole thing still could have been played out with, it still had tons of tension to do that. And it still had the potential to, perhaps make Ruth step back and go, wow, I just really overstepped. And this is the consequence. And I don't want to be like this anymore. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So I found that second sort of betrayal,
which seems innocuous and turns out not to be.
Well, and I found the big betrayal to be a bit contrived. and a bit cliche.
Yeah.
Really. And so
the consequence wasn't necessary.
So, I mean, okay, from a style perspective, when it comes to the book, it's a bit dark and a bit bleak, right? And so that's kind of where my mixed review comes in. As far as changing a whole lot, I think that's the one thing that I would have done differently.
I think I would have done that different. I'm going to go off script for a minute and ask you what you thought of Sam.
I really liked Sam in the beginning. And then I was like, how can you just like the other characters in the book, he didn't take responsibility for his part in it.
Exactly.
I know, we're being so cryptic. I know, it's so hard.
No, he didn't take, and I was expecting him to be a little more heroic during their traveling through the wilderness to get to safety. And he has a couple moments where, I don't know, I think you're right. I loved him all the way through until that big turn. And then after that, all the characters kind of got spoiled.
Yeah.
Helena didn't really, but I shouldn't say that. But I would have gone with a completely different thing for those two. For him, especially, for that moment.
I was like, wait, is he actually going to say anything? Or is it just going to be like everybody else and like lift the rug and sweep it under? You know what I mean? So,
and he did. That's what that family, that family was so good at, we are not going to tell you anything. We're going to lie about everything that happens and not fill you in because there's no need for you to know. That was always their thing. There's no need for her to know. It'll just hurt.
Because I don't want to hurt you any further, so we won't talk about it.
Right. So I won't tell you this necessary piece of information that will save your life. It was just
right.
So yeah. And there was a couple things that happened off stage at the end, mainly Ruth's come to Jesus moment. And I would have liked Ruth's come to Jesus moment.
Yeah, I mean, I can live with that the way that it was, but it was that betrayal that I think would be if I could change one thing, it would be that.
Well, and I think there was a couple characters that appeared, had horrible things happen to them, and then never showed up again. And I get what she was doing. She was trying to show brutality and that, how awful this was and what the Nazis did.
Okay, so
the risks that these people took. But at the same time, I was like, I didn't need to know that. Yeah.
So there's one person that I'm thinking of in particular is a very minor character that showed up, and then we don't know what happens to them at the end. And I think that as a reader that might be frustrating, but in reality, how often did that happen?
I agree. It's just
so many loose ends were not tied up in reality. So it's like, well, I can tie this up for the reader, or I can be like accurate.
But I think it still could have been accurate in some regards. They just kept mentioning him, so I wanted to.
Yeah, and I know we're talking about the same guy, so.
And I was like, but you keep mentioning it. So yeah, as a writer, I would have made some different choices too. But that said, the choices she made, she laid out all the foreshadowing.
Oh, nothing was a big surprise or.
No, technically, it was done superbly.
Everything was motivated. Everything was properly thought through.
Yep.
For the most part, people acted in character. Again, that betrayal thing, I felt was maybe the one thing that was not quite. I just thought, would she really? Anyway, yeah. So overall,
the frustrating things made sense, and they were realistic. They just drove me crazy.
Well, and again, that goes back to Jenoff being such a strong writer.
Yep.
And again, we've both read stuff of hers before that we really enjoyed. So it just happens to be that this one is like not our favorite Jenoff, but.
And I think you're right that because we were expecting it to have more of a Christmas flavor, that may have colored our interpretations.
Yeah, I think so too. So overall, your final verdict is mixed?
Yes. And it bums me out too, because I really wanted to love this book. Those opening chapters were so good that I had huge imposter syndrome, and I expected the rest of the book to carry that way, and they didn't hold up as much as I thought. And the other reason is because I read the end notes like you, and I know that Pam Jenoff is a Jewish author. She went to Poland. She explored all of this, and it affected her deeply. And this book was very important to her. And for that reason, more than anything, I wanted to love the book because I knew it mattered to her.
Yes. Yeah. And you did have one comment about.
Oh, I did. Yeah.
What someone said on.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I kind of went off script and said, I'll let Donna give her opinion first. But you're right. People in a lot of the reviews that she got panned for, she got panned for having an American show up in Poland in 1940 when America wasn't in the war. And she didn't say that he was part of the RAF or any of that stuff, which Americans did do. I had a uncle who went and flew with the RAF. But I can guarantee you, without even asking Pam Jenoff, I can guarantee you that she knows why there were Americans in Poland in 1940.
Yeah, and there's a mention in there, and I didn't mark which page, but there's a mention in there about him and being intelligence, that he's there on. So I think I agree. I don't think she's the kind of author that would be irresponsible in that way.
No, not at all.
Research stuff.
Especially on a topic like this. That's so much to her.
Yeah.
There's no way she's going to just carelessly throw in. And that's one of my bugaboos when they talk about like, oh, well, it was so poorly researched or whatever. And it's like, no, I'm pretty sure Pam Jenoff spent a long time researching this. And I'm going to defend Pam on this one without even asking her knowing her. I'm going to die on that hill with her.
Yeah. 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 So my verdict is the same. It's mixed. I really wanted to love this one, but I do love that you mentioned about her going to Poland and doing this research as a Jewish woman, because that's going to hit very differently for her than it would for you or I.
Right.
And I think the reason why I like knowing that is because this story felt real. And sometimes it felt a little too real. And it was more everyday life, like what it would be like to live during that time, rather than a lot of the plots that we see with, resistance fighters and more of an external plot that is perhaps a little more dynamic or heroic. This is a little more true to life, I think, and indicative of what people actually would have gone through.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of validity in wanting to tell that story. And so I understand why she would choose to write this book in this way in order to demonstrate that truth, I guess. And so
I expect that.
Yeah. And so while I didn't love it, I can absolutely say it's important, and it's an unflinching look at what the Polish people went through during a horrible time in their history.
That's it. And this is the second one we've done in Poland. We did Madeline Martin's too. And
right.
So it's nice to know that their stories are coming out beyond the Warsaw Uprising and things. But we should point out I should point out, I went to Goodreads. The majority of the reviews for this book are 4 and 5 stars. People loved it. There's a few 3s like ours, but for the most part, 4 and 5s. And we're just one opinion. So
yeah, and I think I would
encourage people to read the book. You should go out and get it, support her, and read the book and judge for yourself.
I think I would lean closer to 4 than a 3, just because of the quality of the writing alone.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm definitely 3.5 for me. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so that's sort of great discussion though, because sometimes we have the best discussions on books that, leave us a little bit more conflicted about what we've read and what the author's choices were and stuff. So
yeah, more than usual gushing. And the thing is, like I said, yeah, you're right. Pam Jenoff is a very strong writer. This is very personal to her. You can feel it. And I did like that you really got a handle for what it was like to be poor. I will go back to that opening scene where she's shopping in the market and getting crappy vegetables and knowing that she got the best that she could get, and like they're out of cod and all that stuff. That was.
And there's 5 of them.
Yeah.
There's 5 of them to eat,
and they were just eating soup every single day.
Yeah, which was basically just the water that the vegetables were boiling.
And they were getting snippy and short-tempered, and it was very real. If I were snowed into a cabin with my 3 little siblings that I had to watch all day while my sister's off traipsing in the woods doing whatever, and then you find out it's because she's visiting this handsome American, it all made sense.
I'd be a little ticked too.
Right. So it all made, and if I were the sister who found out, my other sister's kind of hoarding things and being in denial and I have to carry all the weight, I love that too. So yeah, it was very realistic. It just wasn't 100% for me. But next week, I know the book's going to be 100% for me.
Because we've already read it.
No, I didn't get to. I had to bump it around the order. But
I've read it.
Both of Renee Ryan's books, so I know that this one's going to be good. And so, yeah, Renee Ryan's back. One of the original hosts of our show is coming back on for her next book called The Paris Housekeeper.
Yes.
And like I said, already know I'm going to love it. Donna said she did love it.
I did.
And so we are also, it's our holiday show, so there may be some Christmas shenanigans. I imagine we will not be on our best behavior with Renee like we usually are with other authors. And
no, always.
The bar's not super high on our behavior to begin with. So.
Yeah, there may be holiday wine involved.
Right.
Always shenanigans with Renee. And I'm planning a few little shenanigans during the broadcast. And we're going to talk a little bit about like our year in review and all the fun we had this year. So it's going to be a fun broadcast.
So I hope you guys will all join us. We really appreciate you coming in, and all the people who watch afterwards, we really appreciate that too. And we're going to do a little bit of revamping for next year, and we will be here. So we'll talk to you next week on the 19th at 2:00. Bye-bye.
Yeah. All right. Bye.